Hello, everybody. Welcome to everybody who's joining us at this panel at VidCon on live streaming, change the world with a single live stream. Very excited to be here. My name is Michael Wasserman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tiltify, a charity platform that specifically was designed to work with live streams. Some of you may know it. I'm joined by some amazing people on this panel. We've got a man who needs no introduction, yet I have to, because then it's awkward, because then he's just here not talking. Jacksepticeye. Hey, Jack.
Oh, it's me. It's on me. Hi, everyone. I think that intro was the quietest anyone has ever heard me in my entire career. But thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Excited to chat with you on this panel. We also have with us Pleasantlywstd, who is joining us, who is also, many of you may know from her Twitch channel, and recently raising money for some amazing charities like
Hello.
Magic in St. Jude. Hello.
I've done lots of them.
Joining us.
Lots. Yeah, over on Twitch, we've done Trevor Project, St. Jude. We've done F Cancer. I can't actually say the word because I'm a decent person. And then we've also done stuff for WHO, United Nations Foundations, and the list is always growing. So I'm happy I got invited. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And then finally, but very much not least, is Ash is joining us, who is also works with me over at Tiltify as one of our charity success managers. And many of you know her as ashleeeean from Twitch as well. Hey, Ash.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So I'm really excited about this panel because I really love talking about charity live streams. But two, I think it's an amazing opportunity to be able to talk about all that's been happening and at a really important time. Obviously, 2020 has been I would say the most unexpected year of many of our generations from what's happened. And from a charity perspective, that has spawned some unbelievable community activations that has really shown what the power of a live stream has. To sort of kick things off, I was reading I was actually reading the bios that everybody has, and I was reading Jack's bio, and it says that you've done a lot of live streams, and it says that your live streams have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for charity, and I feel the need to correct the numbers a bit, because it's actually about 4.6 million up to this point. But
just a little bit.
just a little bit. But one of the amazing things about it pertaining to this year is, so last year you did multiple charity streams. I think you did one almost every month except for one.
Yeah.
And this year you've done three that have just those three have done over $1.5 million on their own. But they were all really driven in a different way than last year. Last year, I think from viewing all your live streams, they were sort of very planned. I was wondering if we could start off to talk about sort of, your sort of impetus for doing the live streams you did this year seemed to be very much community driven and essentially unplanned.
Yeah, we started off doing them in 2018 and did them. We tried to hit every month, but life got in the way and it became a little hard to keep up with them. And then we went on tour and that made it even harder to do. And then sometimes, I don't want to do them whenever I'm not feeling it, because then you just bring the wrong energy and you don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it. And I want to make sure that we're doing it because we actually believe in the cause and we want to do something good. And then last year, I think we did like 8 in 2018. And then last year it was 9. I can't remember. There's a lot of them. But yeah, then this year, I kind of felt like I was hitting that barrier where it became expected to just do them every month for the sake of doing it. And like I said, I didn't want to do them unless it was a cause that either meant a lot to me, meant a lot to people I know, had close personal experience with, or it's just something that I felt like needed a spotlight or needed money raised for it. And I was getting to that point where we would just, it almost got to a point where we almost just like picked a charity to go with for the sake of it. And I didn't want to do that either because it just felt a little disingenuous. So this year we didn't plan on doing any of them until stuff actually started happening. So it's been very reactionary this year with the Australia wildfires, and then we had COVID, and then we had Black Lives Matter. So it's always been something that I feel like, yes, this is important right now and it needs attention. And it's a lot of people seem to forget that doing a charity stream and doing stuff like this is not just about the money that you raise, but it's also about the awareness that you raise, because you're live for a long time and there's a lot of people watching. And then there's a lot of press that comes up afterwards when you do raise the amount of money. So it's always a great opportunity to sort of teach and educate people on what's happening in the world, and maybe sway some opinions and change some minds, and just open up people's minds and their hearts to what's going on in the world, and kind of give them an outlet to be able to help out in any way possible.
And when you started doing them, you said you started doing them in 2018. What was what triggered the idea for you that you wanted to start doing charity streams at all?
Oh, I wanted to do them for a long time, and I kept thinking that they were harder to do than they actually are. We've since, because of like a platform like Tiltify, I've now realized how incredibly easy it is to actually just set up and go. And there's so many charities on there, but I kept thinking that there was this massive barrier in the way. And everybody else, a lot of people that I looked up to had done charity streams and had raised awareness for good causes. And I wanted to try and help out as well, because the channel got so big and it had so much potential in it that I wanted to use it for something good and use that responsibility maturely. And then the stuff back in 2018, like December, January time, was when the Logan Paul incident happened over in Japan. And I thought that it was a good opportunity to spread some positivity around that scenario and kind of change the sort of narrative where, yes, we can sit and we can talk about it all day till we're blue in the face and be negative and attack each other. And there was a side of that was warranted and necessary and needed to happen. But also I felt like you could inject another aspect into it where we could use this as a teaching moment and a turning point, and kind of raise awareness around all of these topics. And there was a lot of great charities who wanted to get involved. So that was the first one. So it was mega successful because of that.
Yeah, I think it's great to see. I mean, obviously it's great to see what you've done over the years and how they've grown. Pleasantlywstd, aka Vanessa, you've especially recently been, increasing what you've done with your channel, and especially what happened in your May St. Jude Play live streams, and wanted to sort of have you touch on that, and also how you got involved in the charity space.
So I actually got involved in the charity space as a request from a fellow teammate. And she was like, I don't know what it is about you specifically, but I think you would really like charity streaming. So I started charity streaming about a year and a half ago, give or take, because I've been on Twitch. It'll be my 3-year anniversary in November, and May of this year marked my 1.5-year anniversary doing charity streaming. And obviously I'm no Jacksepticeye because, I don't have millions and millions of followers and stuff. But one of the barriers I thought existed initially was that, I'm a small streamer, so I'm not going to raise a whole lot of money. And so it was something about wanting to actually feel like I could use my space to give back in some way, because otherwise I was just kind of hanging out, streaming, playing some video games, and people could chill. But when that opportunity arose and we were doing it, my very first one was for the Trevor Project. I was like, oh, yeah, this makes perfect sense because I'm also part of the LGBTQ community. I'm asexual personally. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's like completely relevant. Let's go ahead and do it. And my very first one was very small. And I raised, I think, $400 for Trevor Project. Woo! And then that following May, I did St. Jude and raised $2,000 and was like, I don't know what's happening anymore, but I love it. Because again, I can figure out, kind of like what Jack said, a way to give back that's more than just talking about it. Now I'm actually doing actionable items because I might not have the space or the time to do panels and books and writings and all that stuff, but I can absolutely just toss some money at it and help someone on that endeavor. And that's how I kind of got started. And this last May is the biggest one that I've done so far, where St. Jude Play Live, I somehow came through with $10,270, all for the kids over at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So, you know, it's something that once I got into it, I've been like firmly entrenched, and I absolutely adore it. And I'm also in the activism space, so it was a natural fit. And that led to me working a lot more closely with Twitch proper for some Charity 101 panels. I've been talking to more charities in person to explain to them, hey, here's what you want to look at, here's what you don't want to look at, and here's some information to get you started, kind of helping coach them up on what to look for with panelists and everything, but also things they can and can't do. And then I also even ran a podcast back in December about getting more people of color involved in charity. So again, it's kind of like just taking all those spaces and merging them into one. And it's been an absolute whirlwind, but it's also been so fulfilling and so just generally positive and good. And I highly recommend that if you haven't, and you're watching this, if you haven't tried to do even just a small charity stream, even do it just once. Find a cause that you really, really, really attach to, you really like. And even if you just get $100, that's $100 that those charities didn't have. And that's a huge difference. It's a huge help for all of these places that need that money to make more changes and more causes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, and we're going to get into more details too on this panel that of sort of like tips and tricks and how people get involved. And just so everyone knows too, we've got a lot of your questions here that we're going to address as we go forward. So Ash, I want to touch in with you as well. You've been in the charity space for a while, and you know, so much so in the past that about a year and a half ago, I hired you to come and work with us and help other people be successful in their charity streams, and wanted you to kind of, again, give us sort of the, you know, what brought you to start streaming for charity in the first place.
Yeah, so it actually started over 10 years ago when I unfortunately lost my best friend to cancer. And I just remember how much pain that caused not only me, friends, and family, but just how much pain that's causing everybody in the world. And it really made me want to start making a difference. So I started working with local bands and venues and like selling out charity concerts that I was booking and planning and like doing the entire thing at the age of 16, 17, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I just knew like that's exactly what I wanted to do. I focused, like when I was going to college, I got my degree in psychology, but I got into a college that was focused on social justice and activism. And that was kind of like my main thing. I just was unsure on how I wanted to proceed in the space. And then sometime my senior year of college, I found Twitch, and I started streaming on Twitch. And I remember my first month into streaming, I did a Relay for Life thing. And this is before any platform like Tiltify was even like out there existing or even in the space. So of course I had to use, you know, the regular Relay for Life platform. And I still raised $600. And that was my first month into my streaming like progress. And it was so empowering. And then that's when I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I went forward and I continued on. I co-founded a charity streaming team called Playing with Fire about November of that same year. Collectively, the team has raised, I think, well over $500,000 for different organizations across the globe. And I just knew that this is what the space that I wanted to be in. And here I am today, and I work with Tiltify, and I get to work with so many amazing organizations, helping them learn a little bit more about the space, as well as working with creators on how to kind of really maximize their time, their efforts, and making sure that every single time somebody goes live, they're hosting an event or anything, it's successful to their absolute like top priority extent.
Thank you so much. So I think there's a couple of good points that you touched on there that I want to kind of start bringing out a little bit further, you know, which is, you know, how you do make a charity stream successful. I mean, you know, we've, you know, from the Tiltify side and just from being in the industry, even watching things that aren't on Tiltify, like Games Done Quick, or Extra Life and other things, we've seen so many charity streams across all these amazing platforms through all these amazing channels. And, they range. And I think there's a couple really powerful points to be made here. One is, that I've sort of noted from all of your responses is you've definitely got, someone like Jack who has grown this amazing community that can make not only a powerful financial impact, but made the important point of the educational and awareness impact, which is equally, if not potentially more powerful, to spread that word that may cause other people to know about the charity, other people to start live streams and get involved. And then you also have, Pleasantlywstd, who, as kind of a dichotomy, and I mean this in the best way, has a CCV of, probably less than 100 viewers and is, now up to raising $10,000 in a live stream. And just to put that in perspective for like people watching generally. So typically when people are raising money for run walks and all of the fundraising things that you sort of hear about across what we'll call traditional fundraisers, the average fundraising activity raises, depending on the activity, between $250 and $750. And usually it's something that somebody does for like a month or 2 months. And yes, there are people that raise more and people that raise less, but that's like the industry average. So I think what's amazing about live streams is that we're talking about you guys raising, even if, thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands to millions, but in days and hours, which in the charity space is mind-blowing. Like this is a totally new situation. Like that doesn't happen. Like raising $5,000 for somebody in a couple hours doesn't happen. This is a totally new thing for the charity world and charity space. And it's amazing that that's what content creators can do. So I want to start talking about how people can then be successful in doing that and getting more into it. So a lot of you, all of you have done different things on your streams. And I want to sort of touch on this with each one of you. What are some of the things that you think about, activities during your charity stream that helps you raise more money? Like Jack, for example, you have this thing that you do every time that's super simple, where if someone donates $1,000, you put on a voice and you put them on the board. And I want you to explain sort of that and some of the mechanisms that you use, because they're not complicated, but they're powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key to it, is that it's just simple. And to kind of highlight that you don't need crazy equipment. Like this camera is nice and this mic is nice and all that, but it's not relevant to actually doing a charity stream. Like most people have a smartphone now. You can just sit down and go and set up a link on Tiltify. But for me, it was a case of experience. I kept feeling like whenever I did the charity streams that I had to fill the space a lot, that I had to keep people's attention and I had to keep it snappy. And I played games all the time. So people needed games and I needed to do that. But the more I did it, the more I realized that wasn't what people really connected with in my community. It was just sitting and listening and talking. And there is an aspect to it where people just want to have their name read out, and that's an easy thing to do. But I think the beauty of having a message with the donation really helps kind of drive a conversation and helps you sort of understand the people who are donating and being able to hear their stories and share their stories. And that in turn might spark somebody else to want to donate and share their story, depending on how relevant it is to the charity we're doing. So lately, the streams I've been doing is literally just me sitting for 6 hours and reading donations and nothing else. Because sometimes when I play games, the donations just kind of stop because that conversation is kind of ended. And that doesn't work for everybody. Like we see people like a Dr. Lupo, for example, who raises insane amounts of money and he just plays Fortnite all the time because he has a great system in place to keep donations coming while playing Fortnite. And I think that's what's key, is just finding out what works best for you and then kind of doubling down on that. Because at the end of the day, whatever gets the most amount of money and the most amount of donations is the important factor of it. And there's no line I won't cross to get that to happen. But for me, luckily, I've just been able to like sit here and just have a conversation with people. And I think having it be something that you actually care about and something that you're heavily invested in and you have a passion for. Because again, like I said, if I was just doing the charities for the sake of doing the charity, then it's harder to talk about them. And you can see that I have no passion for it. So all the ones we've done are stuff that I have friends in, or I personally really like, or have people in the community who really are engaged with it. And I think that's helped drive a lot of the donations in my streams.
Yeah, I think, and to highlight for anybody who doesn't know, what Jack was referring to with Dr. Lupo is like he creates incentives where if you donate a certain amount of money during Fortnite, he'll have to drop his weapon or can't heal or, you know, have some sort of effect on the game. And I think what's really fascinating about what you just said is essentially as you evolved from doing streams, you almost started started packing them with less stuff and raising more money. You know, you basically made it simpler and raised more money by simplifying what you were doing. You know, we're at the point, like, I think the last two you did were like 670,000 and like 610,000. Where
it's pretty crazy.
you just read stuff, which is completely mind blowing. So Pleasantlywstd, I want to sort of bring the same thing to you. You've done a lot of different engagements with milestones, with rewards, with some of the other types of engagements that are available when you do a charity live stream, and wanted to sort of talk to you about that and what you've seen be effective.
So I'm kind of in the same boat as Dr. Lupo because a vast majority of my actual channel is gaming, and I do a lot of the try-hard stuff along with RPGs, which are two very popular genres. So that kind of lends itself to me and helps out a great deal. But I'm also kind of in the same boat as Jacksepticeye because one of the big driving points of my community in general is the conversation, because I can play the game and at the same time read chat and we can unpack and talk about different aspects and ideologies around a game's development or something that they included in the game or how this impacts groups that are represented or not represented. And what I find actually during my charity streams is more than anything, they like the conversation and they still like me playing the game, but they also kind of like to mess with me when I'm playing my games. And I find that my most successful ones usually are when I'm playing Darkest Dungeon or Dead Cells, because the standing one, the highlight for everybody on my channel so far still was when I did St. Jude last year and I made a $10 incentive that said, if you drop $10, I'll let you make a rule that I have to abide by for so many minutes, or depending on what it is, the entire run. And one of my mods dropped $10 and said, you can't use anything but boots. And to this day, I still hate this woman. I can't believe she made me do this. And I was like, really? No, nothing but boots? She's like, yep, nothing but boots. And then I made her mad because I cleared the entire run and only boots. And I was like, mess with me with that $10 again and see what happens. And that's the thing, like, that's the dynamic my community has, though. Like, we're antagonistic like that. We'll sit there and troll each other, but it's a good time all around. And it gets people more excited about it because they're like, oh, okay, so she can clear it with just boots? Bet. And then the next person came around and did $10 and said, do it with just bow and arrow. And I was like, oh my God, this is my life now. This is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do single weapon runs. Fine. You know what? It helps the charity. So fine, do your worst. And then, for Darkest Dungeon, I have small incentives where like I'll name a character after you, or I'll name a character after someone, which I found out because I have a troll community is a terrible idea because some of the names were just absolutely absurd. And I'm like, you know, this is my fault. That's okay. This is okay. This is fine. We're still doing the charity thing. It's not a big deal. And then my last one, I implemented a spinning wheel where like you can drop money and it makes me spin the wheel. And it has a whole different swath of rules on there that I had to abide by. And I found out that people like that because I got 3 donations back to back and I wound up having to fight 2 shamblers back to back as a result. And I was just like, it is a godsend. I'm good at games. Otherwise I would never make money. This is fine. It's okay. And there's actually highlights and stuff of it too, because my charity streams have probably the most viewed and most engaging highlights and clips of anything on my channel, because we're doing it for a good cause. Everyone's engaging, everyone's having a good time. We can still talk about the causes, how it's impacting people. This year I opened up about how I'm doing St. Jude specifically as like a love letter to my late grandfather because he died of cancer when I was 13. And I didn't even realize that that was something I was leaning back on. And I was just like, I get it now. And if that means I have to sit here and run through Dead Cells in just boots, I'm going to run through Dead Cells in just boots. But we're going to also talk about why this stuff is important. So I kind of do a mishmash of what you mentioned from Jack along with Dr. Lupo. I do the talking because I think that engagement is very important too. But then I also like to still have fun with my community. And that helps me kind of integrate them more into the cause. And it doesn't just feel like they're throwing money at me and that's it. It feels like they're actually a bigger part of it and that they actually get to be a notable bit of it and not just a dollar sign.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely, there's certainly no one size fits all when doing a charity fundraiser. I think both Ash and I, from, working with so many, we've seen endless examples of, people doing, all the examples that we give to fundraisers, to charities that ask are all things that we just saw somebody do that worked really well. And that then becomes the example. None of them are examples that we thought of on our own. They were all by watching a creator come up with this, which is what's so cool about it. Ash, I'd like to sort of talk with you as well about, I know you on your fundraisers and the fundraisers that you've seen on Tiltify have seen a lot of really cool use of incentives and polls, and wanted to see if you could touch on sort of some of the best use cases that you've seen there.
Yeah, so one of the best use cases that I've seen with polls, for an example, we worked with Stephen Colbert and Matthew Mercer from Critical Role. And this is where like when you have a celebrity engagement or somebody who's going to be calling in, Jack, you've worked with this numerous times, having celebrities either call in or working with them in person, is how can you maximize that time during a certain moment? And we knew working with Stephen Colbert that we only had an hour of time to actually do this campaign and fundraiser. So utilizing the polls, we're able to do some retroactive fundraising where you're giving the community the opportunity to pick what's going to happen during the actual fundraiser. So it's a really great way. What if you went live? What if you went live and you said, for the entire week before I do my live stream fundraiser, everybody can go and vote for what my outfit has to be and what crazy inflatable costume I'm going to wear on stream for my live stream. You can do a bake sale. You can say, I'm going to do a baking stream. What should I bake? What kind of cake? Take away an ingredient. You can take away a certain item. So tell somebody to make macaroons with no whisk or no mixer. Good luck. It's just one of those funny things where you can use polls in a way to retroactive fundraise. Utilizing rewards is a really great way also too. This is one thing I always like when I directly talk with charities and also creators is I ask charities, what are some impact points? Do you have a number of how a $1, $10, $20 amount can affect your mission and how you guys are able to achieve it? Because I see more often than not, creators actually shape their rewards around those impact points, because now every single time somebody donates that $10, for Pleasantlywstd to spin her wheel, she's able to spin the wheel. And as that wheel's spinning, she can say, hey, did you know your $10 provides this to the hospital? Do you know that this happens? So it's continuing that activism while also encouraging donations. Commonly I always see people donate $1, $5. Hey, this is all I have. I'm so sorry, I can't donate more. And I'm like, you do realize that $3 donation you just threw down provides one pediatric mask for a child in a hospital. And it's having those impact points can be really, really powerful. But going on some unique things that I've seen people do Bob Ross streams. They end up dressing up like Bob Ross and having to follow a Bob Ross painting tutorial. People do spicy challenges. People will legitimately shave off all of their hair. I did one recently and I didn't think it was actually going to be as successful as it was. But it was just a fun trolley challenge. But I told people every $10 you donate, I have to put on one extra layer of clothing. Somebody dropped $300 right then and there for me to put on 30 something layers of clothing.
Yikes.
The next thing I know, I'm 25 layers deep in shirts. I could not physically actually fit any more like shirts on over me. So then I started stacking beanies on top of my head. My head looked like an acorn. It was absolutely hilarious. And then I had to challenge back and say, you know what? I can't put any more on. So every $10, I will take an extra layer off until I'm down to like my clothing that I started the stream on. And people were like, nope, we're going to have you sit there for a bit. And so I'm like begging for donations. And then finally someone came and donated $300 for me to take the extra layers off. Once that was completed, I had 2 people come in and drop $200 to make me do tattoos because I had like temporary tattoos. So not only did I just spend an hour and a half putting extra layers on, took half an hour to take the extra layers off, but now I had to spend 2 hours putting 35 fake tattoos on. And next thing I know, my entire channel was calling me Post Melanie. It was hilarious, but it's just one of those things where it doesn't matter kind of what you do. You want to make sure that when you're setting your rewards and you're talking about impact points, what's going to best communicate with your community. A lot of people always say like, oh, you should do like shots of pickle juice. And I'm like, but I love pickle juice. Oh, well, people hate olives. Try olives. I love olives. You know, so I can't do food-based challenges because quite honestly, I think all food is good because, you know, that's just me. I love to eat. But that's kind of where it is. It's the way that you do your rewards. How can they be done that maximizes what your community likes? So Jax likes for him to talk. Pleasantly Twisted, they like to torture her. And I'm seeing that actually a lot more with smaller streamers, as they like to torture smaller streamers for sure.
It definitely is. It definitely is all about the I think that's sort of the through line here at all the thread is everything that everybody is talking about here is in interaction, is about actually interacting with your community. I think like sort of pre-content creator fundraising in this fashion, fundraising was about having a page that people would essentially go to and drop off money, and you would just ask people if they would donate to your fundraiser. Now we have this almost like exchange of entertainment and discussion with donation added in. And I think that's what's really changed the game here, is that that's where you have the opportunity to discuss, to advocate, to learn, to engage, to somewhat humiliate and torture in the best way, and doing all that stuff. I want to take a couple of really good questions that I've seen to kind of throw to the panel here to see if we can really help some people be as creative as possible. So Edith asks, how do I get past anxiety when I lead my first live stream? Like, how do I keep talking throughout the entire duration of the event without backing down or just being quiet?
For me, I think the anxiety started when I first started doing YouTube, and then hearing my own voice on like recordings, I hated it. My voice was different. I think everyone's kind of like that when they hear their voice for the first time. And then when I first brought in face cam, I hated all the little mannerisms I did. I noticed all these little things like touching my nose like every 2 seconds or something that just kind of drove me mad. But I think a lot of that comes with practice. I think you can easily, even if you don't show it to anybody, you can easily just like sit and do like a let's play or something, or test it out. And you might cringe a little bit at it at first. The more you kind of hear yourself and the more you get comfortable with that, I think the more that barrier kind of disappears and dissipates. And also you don't need to fill space all the time. Some people are just better talkers than other and can talk all day, and you don't need to do that. That's where the stuff like gaming can come in, where you can just kind of play a game and have fun with it, and you don't really need to fill space all the time. Like you said, like one glove doesn't fit everybody. Everybody does things differently, and just because you see me or Vanessa or Ashley do like the same things over and over again does not mean that you have to do the same ones as we do.
I kind of want to add on to that too, in terms of if you want to talk about filling the space, especially considering I like to talk about all the activism stuff all the time, but then there even reaches a point where you kind of start feel like you're beating that dead horse. And so especially with the gaming parts of it, I find that the way that I quote unquote fill that space is I start talking about what I'm doing in the game. So like I'll sit there for a moment and I'll like play around with it, and I'll just kind of think out loud and say, okay, I think I want to go to this path or this path and everything else, because it allows people the room to be engaged without feeling like you're overbearing them with the same content all the time. And it also gives you space to kind of talk, but you're not necessarily talking to people. You're just kind of thinking out loud. You're wondering, okay, what should I do next? What should I do? Da, da, da. And it gets people to actually kind of engage on a different level. And then when you get back to that point where it's like, okay, we've taken a small break, we're going to do these things, by the way, and you can kind of segue back into it. That's the only other thing I could add to it, because I agree wholeheartedly with what Jack said.
Yeah, get comfortable talking to yourself is the biggest thing I would say. Like, even like if you're getting ready in the morning and you're like looking in the mirror, talk to yourself. Give yourself a pep talk in the morning. That small thing can really help you when it comes to doing live streams. Also, post-it notes are your best friends. When I do my live streams, I maybe have like 6 or 7 different post-it notes around my PC. Some of them say remember to breathe. Some of them are impact points and statements. One thing to always do too is pose a question. Ask a question to your chat, because then that opens up more conversational points for you. And at that point, you just start kind of feeling like you're talking with a friend than you are talking to yourself. And so like that's kind of where like I've personally found success in breaking out of that shell and that anxiety of I'm live streaming, here's my voice, here's my face, and now you guys are about to watch me potato aim all throughout this game. and narrate. If you're going to be doing something, talk it through. Almost turn off that filter of like, this is my thought process. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Like that can really help. But talking to yourself in the morning, use post-it notes, post questions to the chat to engage conversations that then will lead into more conversations.
Yeah, and I'd also recommend trying to flip off that switch of like fear of the audience, because a lot of people think that when they do these types of things, there's a wrong way of doing it. It's the same when people donate like $1 and somebody else donates 50. They think they're doing it wrong because they don't have enough money to donate. But you can't, if your heart's in the right place and you actually want to do it and you believe in the cause that you're raising money for, you can't do it wrong. Yep. Other people might do it slightly better in your perspective, but you keep, like, as long as you're sitting there and you're trying, then that's the important thing. And with time, like, go back and watch any of our earlier stuff. I'm sure it's not the same as what it is now. Me, definitely not.
Yeah, I think those are all excellent points. We have another question from Athena Priftakis. How much of a stream is planned? Do you stream using any sort of outline, or is it more spontaneous or improv sessions?
I know for charity, I plan way in advance, but that's because I know that my channel is going to torment me. And I just preemptively lay that out there, and it's like, well, this is my life now. But for the most part, I don't really plan. I have like I call it like a baby outline. Things of, okay, make sure that you've set up these commands, make sure you put your scenes in order, hit IRL, don't hit game, you hit game, congratulations, you messed it up. That's another thing too. You're going to mess up. That's okay. That is completely 100% legit. You're human. You're allowed to mess up.
Make fun of yourself.
Yeah, I would say it's perfectly fine. I hit the wrong button on my Stream Deck constantly, and people are just like, how do you not know how to use a Stream Deck yet? And I'm like, hey, mind your business. But other than that, like, there's a baby outline that I follow where it's just like, these are the things I need to make sure I do. The rest of it, just let it ride. In terms of charity streaming, I do plan ahead because I want to make sure that my incentives are relevant. I want to make sure my milestones are relevant and something fun. I get engaged with the community to make sure that all like is something that they're into. But other than that, just enjoy yourself. Have a good time.
Yeah, I think for me, we've planned out, and Michael, you've helped out with a bunch of these, where we've planned out like massive ones, like the Christmas ones, and we've built a set, and we had different points for every hour, and this person's coming on at this hour and whatnot. And those are very hyper planned, but they're, like Vanessa said, there's always room to do it wrong, and you can, like, stuff's going to go over time and everything, so it's never too stringent. But 90% of them is literally just reading messages from donators. So it's just kind of, they kind of infer what the topics are going to be and how the tone is and what we're actually talking about and where the conversation is going. But yeah, most of the time, I could not plan out anything like this. My brain is not capable of that. I just talk and go, and sometimes my mouth goes faster than my brain does.
Yeah, I think honestly, most of the planning goes into like preparing for the actual stream, not the stream itself, like not having an outline and such, but preparing rewards and incentives and just kind of getting those together, making sure that you're marketing, you're using your social media to really kind of promote and push it. I think is what you end up putting more effort into than the actual like super overthinking of what am I going to do on stream? What am I going to play? You're more focused on the incentives, the charitable portion, and just making people aware that you're doing it. I feel like that's what's most outlined and pre-planned out of anything when it comes to charity live streaming.
I'd say one of the things that is very effective that I'd like to see people do more of, that, you know, people like Jack do very well, and Dr. Lupo that we mentioned, and others, is pre-announcing your live stream. You know, whether that's by a video that you post that's announcing with the donation link already there. You could raise thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars before you even go live. People don't have to wait. And those could be, hey, if I raise this amount of money before I go live, maybe I'll get the first milestone. But, you know, Jack always posts a video a couple days before announcing that it's coming with the link. I think it's important, like, you want people to know it's coming. People need to sort of, you know, your community needs to prepare themselves that you're doing a fundraising stream and understand what it's about, and getting that message across, I think, is incredibly important.
Yeah, and for some of them, like you mentioned Games Done Quick a little bit ago, and another reason why Dr. Lupo's ones are so massive, and the jingle jam that the Yogscast do every year, is because there's a huge consistency to it. They've started it years and years ago, and then it's just kind of built upon itself every time. So when this time of year comes around, everybody knows, like, oh, it's Games Done Quick time, and some people even take time off work or school or whatever during that time to actually like sit and be there for however long it's going to go on, and really want to be engaged in it and be part of it. And then every year they just kind of keep topping themselves every time. So for stuff like that, I think if you have a cause that you really believe in and you want to double down on and really means a lot to you, then just kind of like picking that and working with it every time. Because I personally do a lot of different charities, but we have a lot of people who do like the same charity every time. And that's also really important, because you become sort of a spokesperson or an ambassador for them, and you start learning more about the company and can talk more about it, and you get really passionate about it. And some of the reasons why some of the streams that I've done have meant a lot is because I've met the people who work at these organizations, and we've gone to the hospitals and seen the work where it goes, and it's kind of hard not to be enthusiastic and passionate about it then when you actually see what they're doing.
Absolutely. So we've got about 2 minutes left. I want to leave everybody on a question from, I hope I don't get this right. It's Daiuke.
I hope you don't get it right.
Yeah.
What's the biggest and special moment while you did a charity stream? So what's your most special charity stream memory? Each of you, really quick.
Mine was probably when I did St. Jude last year, and I got my first ever quote unquote big donation from a now regular who hangs out in my stream, because I never in my wildest dreams thought I'll have somebody stop by and drop off $400. And this year, the same person dropped off $1,000. There are many clips of me in a crying disaster. They're pretty ugly. I highly recommend you watch them.
Mine was the Hope from Home one that we did, because it was something, Michael, we talked about, and we got it together so quick. It was like 2 weeks, and we really wanted to do something, but make it bigger than just one organization or just one event. And then trying to reach out, I messaged like 200 people on my Twitter and DM'd so many of them and gave them all the information and kept up that conversation. And then when we went live that day, just the amount of donations that came in globally, and so many people who don't normally charity stream took up their community and put them to task and start raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there was so many people who broke all their own personal records for the amount of money that they've raised themselves. And it was just so cool to see all these creators come together and all these communities come together for something that was a global pandemic that was facing all of us. And to just see that like glimmer of humanity come back, and that glimmer of hope, to see everybody actually try their best to put a different spin on all the negativity that was going around at that time.
Yeah.
For me, I have kind of like two Tide moments. I can't pick. I'm sorry, I'm that person today. But one of them is during one of my first ever like major charity streams. Brandon Green, who is the creator of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, PlayerUnknown himself came by and dropped $500, and that was like really big to see. A developer, or creator of a game that I was playing come by and support. The second one was when I first told the story to my community about my friend who passed away from cancer 10 years ago. There was then a string of donations ranging from $100 to $250 where they all were spamming for Gracie, rest in peace, Gracie. And like that was like a moment for me that my community understood what the charity had meant to me on a really personal level, and came together to show that support in a monetary fashion. And that meant a lot to me.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank all three of you so much for joining the panel, and VidCon for putting this together and allowing us all to be here. We can, anybody who wants to continue this discussion, you can do that on the VidCon server on Discord. We thank everybody for joining us here today and hanging out. Thank you very much.